Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm always happy to be here with you, though I'm not always happy about the subject that we're going to be speaking about. Today, we're going to be talking about what happened on April 11th, Sunday, at 2 p.m. That was the attempted arrest and death of Daunte Williams. It's a troubling story that is continuing to go on right now. In fact, we were woken up at about 6:30 this morning to be made aware of what is happening in the details. Here it is now, about 8:45 a.m., and we're going to be reporting on that. Because there's a lot of emotion that's going on right now, and not a lot of information. We hope to try and give you a little more information and to calm people's nerves, to slow down what is happening, because this is a dangerous pattern. Now, the first thing we heard about this morning is, again, we see that there was a death of a black man. Now, this isn't Chicago that we're talking about, where 25 people were shot this weekend, 3 of them fatally in Chicago alone. That's not to even consider the 34 people that were shot, 8 fatally, last weekend in Chicago. In fact, in Chicago, we've seen 795 people have been shot this year, 192 more than in 2020. There have been 155 people that have been killed this year in Chicago, 27 more than 2020, and these are year-to-date numbers, not the full year. So there is a troubling trend in America. Black-on-black crime is the biggest source of the death of young black males, as we see with Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore, and many other cities across the country. But the thing that grabs the headlines, the things that the media pushes out for eyeballs and for sensationalism, aren't those kind of stories. In fact, they ignore Chicago, Baltimore, Detroit, LA, New York. They ignore these crimes on a regular basis, and instead they want to promote other stories. Stories that both have a political agenda, but also get more eyeballs for sensationalism. One of the examples we're going to be talking that we had covered previously was the shooting of Rayshard Brooks, that was initially reported as a senseless, cold murder of a black man in Atlanta, and resulted in the burning down of a Wendy's, an attempted autonomous zone in Atlanta that ultimately led to the death of a 6-year-old boy. But the fact is, Rayshard Brooks, as we went through the body cam video, was not some innocent. He actually assaulted police officers. He actually armed himself. He was a danger and a threat, and he was fighting the police because he was being arrested. In Portland, we saw that there were wide, massive riots and fires that occurred because a black man assaulted a police officer with a knife and re-entered his vehicle, possibly looking to escalate the confrontation with police after he was being arrested for violating a warrant for his arrest. And then there's the Detroit Hakeem Littleton shooting, which was initially reported as a senseless murder of an unarmed young man that turned out to be a young man who point blank range tried to shoot a police officer in his face. So we know that sometimes the initial reports, the initial emotion that may be stirred up, that some agitators may use to their advantage to cause rioting, to promote a political agenda, often seen by BLM, which is Black Lives Matter, the organization, or Antifa, isn't always the true story. There is more information often behind this. The question is, when do we calm down and get that additional information? Is that before or after potentially billions of dollars of rioting has occurred? after or before the consequences of these riotings, these attempted autonomous zones, leads to the death of individuals that we have seen throughout this nation, in Dallas, in Portland, in Kenosha. We need to be calm. We need to understand what is actually happening. Now, we've been spending a couple hours now trying to find out what in fact is actually happening. One of the sources, in looking on Twitter, one of the sources, Chris Haraspy, who's an anchor for Care 11, I'm not familiar with it, has stated that Daunte Williams had contacted his mother after being pulled over by police for a traffic stop to provide car insurance information to the police. During that encounter, during that event, it was heard, as reported by the mother, that Daunte was told, "Don't run." I think that's very important. So Daunte was made aware that there is a warrant for his arrest, and he was told not to leave the scene, not to resist arrest. It seems that at that moment, that's when he re-entered his car and wound up being shot. And that was fatal. He drove off and then later crashed his car with a passenger in the car also being injured. Now, we've looked at this from many different sources, from the BBC talking about this, to the New York Post, to Newsweek, and many others. And the information we're talking about right now has been gathered through all these different sources, and we're trying to make sure you understand, because there isn't a lot of information right now. There is a lot of emotion right now, and people are capitalizing on that for their advantage, which may not be justified. In fact, we would say rioting, no matter what the underlying cause, is a crime and is not justified. It only harms communities. It only harms individuals. It is not a solution. Protest, peaceful protest, is a First Amendment right. It is something guaranteed for all Americans, and we would never suggest anyone should not protest for any reason they wish. But violence is not protest. Rioting is not protest, and they should never be confused as being the same thing, and they are never justified, no matter what the reason. But as we said, looking at the BBC News, which is one of the least emotional reporting on this news. You have to actually go outside of the United States to get actual reporting and not emotional enticement, emotional inflaming of emotions. And they are very clear that there isn't a whole lot that is known exactly. At about 2 p.m., we know that a Daunte Wright had been pulled over by the police, and then he resisted arrest. He got back into his vehicle and then was shot. These are the things we know. And we know that over 500 people had come out to protest, and that the National Guard has been called already. We know that, according to the New York Post, that at least 500 protesters had immediately come out onto the scene without any information being known correctly, without any details, and that many started looting and trashing up to 20 different stores and businesses in that local community, which will hurt that local community. It never helps. And we know that one of the most sensationalistic abuses of this story has been by Newsweek, that we have noticed, where they're talking about Daunte Wright. The Brooklyn Center police say man fatally shot, refused arrest, where Newsweek reports, and I quote, Daunte Wright, a 20-year-old black man who was shot by an officer in Minneapolis before crashing his car a few blocks after, had an outstanding warrant for his arrest. That is a sensationalizing first paragraph. It is meant to grab eyeballs. It is meant to inflame emotions. It is not a neutral reporting. This is a problem, and I'm really upset about this because Newsweek then goes into talking about almost immediately about Wright's family, his mother in particular, who is talking about an air freshener hanging from a rearview mirror, which is something that has been traveling around on Twitter, inflaming people's emotions, making them very upset. Do we know this is true? Do we know that he was pulled over for an air freshener? We don't know. Was it the right thing to do? What kind of air freshener was it? Was it large? Was it obstructing his vision? We don't know. Now, is that worth being shot? No. But that isn't necessarily why he was shot. There is a difference. And we do have to understand the details. We do need to know what to correct if anything needs to be corrected. We don't need to sensationalize this. And using the words of a mother who just lost her son is sensationalization. That is trying to amp up the emotions of people who are already emotionally upset. We know that the trial of Derek Chauvin is currently ongoing in Minneapolis. It happens to be 10 miles away from Brooklyn Center, where Daunte Wright was shot. We know that across the nation, the George Floyd death led to riots throughout the entire nation. Billions upon billions of dollars of destruction just in Minneapolis alone, not even including Seattle, Portland, Dallas, Atlanta, New York, and the rest of the nation. As well as over 30 people were killed because of those riots. So anytime we can stop and slow down this process and allow people to absorb the information, the facts that are on hand, to then make a justified reaction, whether that be a protest or anything else, we need to understand that. And the sensationalism of Newsweek is not helping. The sensationalism that we see from Governor Tim Walz is not helping. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has already said that he's praying for Daunte Wright's family as our state mourns another life of a black man taken by law enforcement. Well, he's throwing the police under the bus. Is it justified? Was there a reason for this? We don't know. Neither does Governor Walz. He hasn't seen the video yet. He doesn't know the information on the scene. He wasn't there. He's reading tweets. So he's not helping the situation. At the same time, the American media is so busy trying to make sure they've got the story correct that they're not necessarily getting the details. Buried in the middle of most of the stories that are being covered by this, whether it's overseas or in the United States, almost everyone is focused on the mother who is in emotional turmoil right now, having lost her son, and everyone has been missing that Daunte, several times have been said, that he was told not to run. Something happened. Why did he decide to run? That is a key factor that should be answered. And another question is, what was he being arrested for? We know that it's been said that there is a warrant. In fact, we had to go through and find Al Jazeera, and of all news agencies, Al Jazeera was the first one where we found that they were able to identify that the warrant appears to be a non-felony warrant, which is essential for understanding the situation. We need to calm down. We need to understand the details. We need to make sure this isn't another Hakeem Littleton situation where people are becoming very upset without knowing the true details, where misinformation is being spread through the news media as well as Twitter and social media, and people are reacting on that. We need to make sure that this doesn't turn into another nationwide mass rioting, destroying billions of dollars of businesses and harming dozens of individuals, in fact, killing many individuals across this nation, over 30 people. We don't need that again. We don't need that in 2021. We need to calm down. Were the police correct? we don't know. Why did Daunte Wright think the best answer in the situation was to run from the police? Why did he get back into his vehicle? We may never know that answer. But what we do need to know is this isn't the moment to let our emotions run wild. We need to know and understand what happened. Why did it happen? Were the police correct, and did they do the right thing? And we will never know that until we get to see the video of that event, unfiltered, uncut, and shown to us so that we can evaluate that, much like we were able to evaluate that with Rayshard Brooks. We're in a difficult time in our nation. We have a lot of high emotions. We have autonomous zones that are trying to break our laws and to incite people into violence. We need to be above that. We need to slow down and get the details. We don't know what's happening yet, what happened yet. We need to get an understanding. And perhaps we also need to send out the message that if the police pull you over, whether it's rightly or wrongfully so, the answer is not to then try and escape the scene, to assault officers, or if you're being arrested, to try and evade arrest. It doesn't help the situation. It only escalates it. It's a troubling thing, and it's horrible when this is the first thing in the morning you wake up to. We can only hope that our nation will stay calm, find out the details, and then together we can act appropriately to resolve this. We can only hope. We thank you. We look forward to speaking with you again soon. We hope that your day will be much better, and we'll talk again soon.